Jay, welcome to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast.
Hey, Elizabeth, stoked to be here.
Can't wait to go down all of the e-commerce rabbit holes with you today.
Let's do it.
Jay, before we dive into all things your consultancy, Ecommerce Equation, can you just share with us a little bit about yourself, your background, and all of these amazing business ventures that you've been involved in before launching Ecommerce Equation?
Yeah, for sure. So going right back to the start, I started out in finance, studied finance, and got into financial planning and eventually stockbroking and derivatives trading. That was right about 2007. I graduated, so not a great time to get into finance right before the GFC. And so kind of got a little way into the finance field, and it had some headwinds. And honestly, it wasn't what I thought it would be. It wasn't a lot of sales and not kind of taking over the world. So I had the opportunity when a friend started was working in digital marketing. I was in London at the time doing derivatives trading, and a friend kind of called me and said, I've been working in SEO, and I think this is a really great business opportunity. And I know that you know how to do sales and have some capital. Like, do you want to come and do digital marketing with me? And I was coming off the back of a long, cold London winter and thought, yeah, that sounds really good. I'm going to go back to Oz. And so that was kind of my finance career, and I entered the digital marketing world in 2012. And just serendipitously, our first client was Hype DC, which was a shoe brand. And we started working with Hype DC in 2012. And then and started our agency Search Insights. So I ended up buying out that business partner after a year when he wanted to go in a different direction. And I grew Search Insights by myself from 2012 to about 2017. And over that time, I just kind of went into e-commerce because we had Hype DC as our first client. We just started attracting other e-commerce brands, and we ended up, relatively big. We had offices in Melbourne and Manila and Sydney, and worked with like just a bunch of Australian fashion brands like Camilla and Age and Alice McCall and Ginger and Smart. And we kind of just became the digital marketing agency for a lot of fashion brands and a lot of other brands like Afterpay and the Sydney Royal Easter Show and just Primary Healthcare. So we had a really good roster. And so that was sort of my on-ramp into digital marketing and into e-commerce and fashion a little bit as well. So 2017, we had our first kid, and then we had our second kid, and I wanted a bit of a sea change and decided to sell that agency. Yeah. So sold the agency 2017, 2018. And that was kind of everything that led up to Ecom Equation. And after that, I kind of went on to, I had a bit of an open space.
Amazing. Okay, so kids certainly change life a little bit, don't they?
They do.
So
they definitely do. Yeah.
You've had to design your life around that stage, of course, as we all do at some point in time. Definitely. I love how you mentioned about taking over the world, because that's certainly how you landed on my radar. I feel like you're taking over the world now in the e-commerce space, which I absolutely adore. But you've mentioned some amazing foundations. This just didn't happen overnight, what you're doing now. You've had an amazing solid foundation in the finance industry. You're finely tuned with e-com and digital marketing. But it doesn't stop there. We've got to mention some of your amazing ventures that you've got. So children's books, you've got Dad Cooler. Tell us about your own, because you're not just teaching this, you've actually got your own businesses. And I think that's really important, for our listeners to understand. I always admire when someone is doing it for themselves, first and foremost, and succeeding in that space, and then sharing that knowledge with others. So tell us a little bit about those businesses.
Yeah. So after I sold the agency, I thought, look, I've got a skill set, and why don't we try this out? So the first product was a children's book, and my friend launched this on Kickstarter, and I took a minority interest in that. And we went from an $8,000 Kickstarter to selling over $4 million of that children's book in 6 months. And wow. I did that basically with Facebook ads, and it was wildly profitable. It was a really fun experience. And in the process, it consolidated so much of my learning, being on the other side of the equation, being the actual, person responsible, not just the person taking orders and trying to, advise, but actually having full autonomy, being able to do everything I wanted. It was a really formative experience getting my hands on my first product to scale. And so that was my first product. Then we went on to do another children's book business called Alphabet Legends, which had a bigger range of products. And then I ended up selling stubby holders with your face on. I've sold millions of dollars worth of these things, believe it or not.
So do you know how many men in my life want one of those now?
I'll give you a coupon code after the call.
Your sales will go through the roof.
Yeah. So I've definitely had my hands on a few of my own products as well. And I think it's really important to experiment with my own money. And I think it's really the only way that you can truly understand a market is to participate in the market.
I absolutely love that. I obviously love that you've got that grounding in the fashion industry as well. You mentioned some amazing brands earlier that you were servicing as part of your prior agency. But yeah, that hands-on experience, as you said, spending your own money, there's absolutely nothing like it.
Definitely.
So Jay, you've had, as I said before, it seems like you're taking over the world, or, in particular, the e-commerce space, at least here in Australia, and no doubt beyond our borders. But, what is it that is attracting clients to you at the moment? So we know that your consultancy has, I think, over 500 trusted clients at the moment. That's probably and counting. And you're working with, Australia's top brands at the moment, and probably everything between, because I know that you're very passionate about supporting the emerging brands and smaller businesses as well. But what's definitely inspired you, and what is it about your agency or your consultancy that is different to everyone else who's out there at the moment?
Yeah, I guess my mission is really to help any e-commerce founder with an established business have the tools, knowledge, resources to scale their brand without dependency on third parties. And I think what I realized going from agency to having my own brands to scale, and then helping out friends in a consulting capacity, is that a lot of people get to a certain point in their business. A lot of people have a passion for a market. They're great at designing products and serving a market, and maybe they even hustle and get a little bit of runs on the board and scale a certain way. But there's a transition where you can't stay a purely product-based business if you want to achieve the true potential of your e-commerce store. You have to go on a journey to become a sales and marketing organization that happens to have great products. And that is really the key transformation that I have been working on. And I've seen it create just such incredible growth and opportunity for people to further their missions that it's really become my passion. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of the core intent of Ecommerce Equation as a coaching community versus, another agency, if that makes sense.
I absolutely love it. I actually heard someone else say, I think it was yesterday, they said, if you want to succeed in something, you've got to learn the trade, right? Yeah. So whether you're going to implement those learnings or not, so whether you're going to be the one who's managing, your e-com or your Facebook ads or any other digital marketing, strategies, it's important one way or another to understand how it works so that empowers you. And we'll talk about agency in a minute. And again, I love that you've been on both sides because, you're not highly recommending agencies at the moment, but you were an agency. And that's really powerful because you're sharing some insights. You're kind of pulling back the curtain so that it will empower brands, no matter what they decide, whether they decide to self-manage their Facebook ads, for example, which I know you're a big advocate of, or whether they decide to outsource. The learnings, no doubt, that your clients are experiencing, that they're empowering, okay, when it comes to that high-level decision-making. And I think that's really important, something I'm really passionate about. And I always been passionate about professional and personal development and passing knowledge on, and ensuring that, our clients as well, they're just equipping themselves with that knowledge so that they can get the best results for their business. And I highly agree, sales and marketing, it's got to be a huge focus. There's no point having, a spare room or a warehouse full of products that you just can't sell because you've poured all of your money into, the product in the boxes, but you've got no way of moving that or reaching your consumer because it's been a second thought or an afterthought, and you're all the way down the track and then it's crisis mode.
100%. And I also think it's quite unreasonable to expect that a third party on a small monthly retainer can just absorb all of that responsibility for scaling your customer base as well. Like,
Yeah.
and that's so often people get to that point and they want to stay comfortable in that product space and that design space, and they abdicate all responsibility for growing the business to kind of a random third party. And
Yeah.
I think there's a time and place for an agency, but I think that taking on some of the accountability and understanding it, you don't have to push the buttons forever, but just like you learned how to demand plan, you learned how to find manufacturers, you need to go there for a while and actually build those departments in your business, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. Let's perhaps elaborate on that while we're touching on it, just around the agency side.
Yeah.
I had attended your training, which I absolutely loved, which was called the Ad Agency Deception. A little bit controversial, just a little bit. But of course, you clarified that during the training and explained why, that was kind of the way that you were articulating what you were teaching. But I know that you're very, very passionate about this, and you've shared some of the dynamics around that already. But what is it that brands really need to know? What are the high level, the must knows that would empower a brand to actually even motivate them to learn more, to take that kind of control back in-house and understand where kind of the traps can be, where especially if they've gone through that experience, poured money into an agency and not seen a return on that investment?
Yeah, I think it's so common and so prolific that people have had that experience.
Yep.
Every time we welcome new people to the e-commerce equation, I always ask, like, have you done a course? Have you worked with an agency? And it's almost ubiquitous that people have had, maybe they've had positive experiences as well, but nearly everyone has had a negative experience with an agency.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes I think that isn't just the agency. Sometimes people are trying to fix all of the problems of getting customers with the agency or the traffic. And so often there's a problem somewhere else in the business that they will never correctly identify, because they're able to constantly point a finger at the agency and say, this isn't working. But it may not be working, not because of the implementation of a channel. It may not be working because the conversion path isn't up to scratch and not at the benchmark. So you might just be not having a large enough basket size or a good enough conversion rate compared to the other people in the market. Or it might be that even your on-site merchandising isn't great, and you've got size breaks, and you've got stuff that's out of stock, or you might be swimming against seasonality, or it might be after payday sale and you don't have an offer in the market. There's so many things that can cause your ads not to work that aren't necessarily just implementation. And it can be hard to know if it's the implementation of the agency or those factors. And I think that's the first thing. When you're constantly using a third party, it's very easy to just say ads don't work and it was them. And sometimes it is them, definitely, right? But also sometimes there's other things that you need to investigate. And it's not until you get clear on what the actual constraint is in your business that you can really work on that and find the true bottleneck and move through that. So it's not throwing shade at agencies altogether. It's also just the whole ecosystem of attracting customers and converting customers that you need to delve into. And that could be masked with agencies sometimes.
I totally agree. Look, there are so many variables as to why, any strategy in our business may not be working. But I agree with what you said earlier. I think just about every client I meet, if not 9 out of 10, will share an experience with me on an amount of money that they've poured into an agency and just haven't got the return.
Yeah.
But the first question I will ask is, okay, well, let's unpack that. What was the experience like? Who are you working with? What were the KPIs? What's your let's have a look at your product. Let's have a look at your business operations. There's a whole host of things that need to be reviewed or audited to make sure that, you're finding the root cause of the challenge. But that's not everyone. There's also some amazing, agencies out there that do fantastic work. And Absolutely. You can see that, brands wouldn't be where they are today without those agency partners. But I guess, for our listeners, if it hasn't worked for them, then you've got to go to that next stage. It's like, okay, well, what is next? And how am I going to pivot here to get a breakthrough in my business? I've got a question that's come to mind. Jay, how raw and real are you with your clients? For example, we mentioned product, product is the heartbeat of a business. If someone comes to you and says, look, Jay, done all the things, I've had the agency, I've self-managed, but it's just not working. My ecom, it's just not firing. Yeah. And if you look at that business and you identify that perhaps the product is not where it needs to be, or as you mentioned, there could be other things that just aren't working. It could be the creative, the photography, the brand assets. It could be anything. How does that kind of play out for you if they're kind of there hoping that this is going to be, the next kind of breakthrough for them? How does that conversation play out?
Yeah, it's a really awesome question. And so to start with, I will never judge a product. In fact, if you look at my products, they're not revolutionary, right? So, yep. So what I do is I call on my finance background, and I like to be just completely informed by data. And I think the data doesn't lie, right? And I think the situation that you just described, which is, what is it? Is it my product? Is it my creative? Is it my ads? What is the constraint in the business? Is the core of what people need to understand. And we have two tools that we use to understand that. The first we call the e-commerce equation, which is a way of tracking some key metrics in your business. And really, we want to understand the cost centers and some key metrics in your business to understand what's happening, how your equation is working. So we have this idea of an equation, which is just basically there's a system that you have which takes traffic and turns it into money, right? By selling a physical product and paying for some stuff along the way. So when you break that down, the data doesn't lie. And the other thing is, when you're in a community where there's 300, 400 people sharing information, you can start to benchmark people. So if someone came to me and said, is my product bad? What I would do is I would say, well, hey, I've surveyed hundreds of Australian e-commerce brands last month, and on average, they were extracting $3.30 revenue per visit. So for every visit to the website, they collect on average $3.30. So if your product is extracting less than that, then it could be your website isn't working well, or it could be that your product isn't in demand, right? And I would use that data. So I always want to be data-led, especially, I'm not really objective with products. It's more, what is the data telling me? So if you had a low revenue per visit, and we could probably assess that and try to figure out, is that, product to market fit? Is it your offer in the marketplace, or is it something that's happening on site? And I think I would use data to kind of inform that decision.
The data doesn't lie, does it? And I like that you've got all of these processes and systems to track the metrics. Even some of our clients who have been working with you and sing your praises and absolutely love it, they're starting to use this language. Like, I think it's the clarity sheet. That's one of your tools? Okay, that keeps getting mentioned. Oh, but Jay's clarity sheet. So it's just becoming, part of the e-com terminology. But I like that you've got these very clear systems and processes in place, because as you said, the data and the analytics, it doesn't lie. It's there for you to use in a powerful way. I also loved your point about the product, because if you came to me today and said, hey, Elizabeth, I'm about to start, Dad Cooler. And I'm like, hey, Jay, what's Dad Cooler? And you're like, oh, it's a stubby holder with a face on it. I'm not sure I'd be saying, hey, Jay, let's go. But you've made a success of it, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Who knows? I guess, in that scenario, who's to be the judge of that, right? So you've tried it, you've tested it, and you found a gap in the market there. So I guess for those listening, do your own due diligence, but do that due diligence across the board. And again, make sure that you've got some access to some sound, analytics and processes that you can work through to validate that the direction you're going in is, you're on the right path to profitability.
Yeah, it's so much of it's about unit economics and just understanding how it's all working. And I think once you can start to benchmark against others and you can just see where you are, it becomes pretty obvious. It's like, well, if my revenue per visit's good, but say my click-through rate on the ads is really low, it's probably a creative issue, and you can really just start to stop all this doubt and trial and error and second guessing yourself and actually get to work on what you need to work on. Yeah. And I think that's really, that's kind of why we call it the clarity sheet, right? Mm-hmm. So you can have clarity into what you need to do and then confidence to execute on it.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Now, Jay, you and your team, you coach, your clients, these brands, to become insanely profitable. So you're coaching them to become insanely profitable. That's a pretty big statement. But if anyone goes to your Instagram right now, there's some amazing testimonials coming through, and I absolutely love that. You're able to share these stories from your clients. So there's real tangible kind of experiences being shared. But my question is, why do businesses find e-commerce so difficult? It's almost like, it's an area that needs to be demystified. And you've spoken about a few things. We've spoken about the analytics and the data and the agency and all of the things. But do you think, has e-commerce kind of exploded and accelerated at a pace that businesses are finding it hard to keep up? Is there not enough credible information out there? Why? Because I actually see a lot of our startup and emerging designers, so startup clients and emerging designers, they're almost fearful about digital advertising. They're fearful when it comes to Facebook advertising, and they'll almost like just pull out of it or pull back. Mm-hmm. And that can really start to cripple their business and really prevent, that next level of growth. So what would you share around that? What are some of the experiences that your, people who come to you are constantly sharing in terms of what stifled their growth here?
I think there's just a absolute plague of uncertainty, like as you described, like people don't know what's happening with the ads. I think people just don't know if it's working, and they just don't know what to do. And I think that is the most common thing that we hear is, I don't know if my ads are working. I don't know if my agency is working. I don't know if, I'm profitable. They just don't know what to do or what's working and what's not working. And the other thing that I see a lot of is there is just an insane amount you could do. You could do TikTok ads, Pinterest ads, Snapchat ads, Facebook ads. You could do influencer marketing. You could do Google, like SEO. There's just so much you could do. And I think people get stuck in this loop of dabbling a little bit into one, and they don't see wild success, and they move on to the next one, or they're just constantly trying to find a massive breakthrough. The reality is each one of those things might have worked, but they just weren't doing enough of it, or they didn't have enough clarity into the actual impact of that at small scale to see that it could have worked if they kept with it. So they're the common scenarios that I see, just, complete doubt, dabbling, and uncertainty as to whether it's working or not.
I would agree. And I think there's so many things that can be done. It's that overwhelm of where do I start? Where do I fine tune my skills, at the beginning of the journey? And then what does that look like 6 to 12 months down the track or 5 years down the track?
100%.
Jay, what's your response when you hear Facebook ads just don't work, Jay?
Facebook ads just don't work. Yeah, I mean, that's a real global statement, I guess the seat that I'm in, last month, our community, through our frameworks and coaching, spent $9 million on Facebook ads. We will spend over $100 million this year collectively, and that was going through our coaching and our frameworks. So just for context, just to give you some context, right? Yeah. Australia generates about $1 billion in ads for Facebook. So about 10% or 1 in every $10 that goes to Facebook in Australia goes across my desk, right? So, and e-commerce isn't all of their spend. So we're probably seeing, I don't know, a quarter or a third of all e-commerce spend in Australia goes across my desk. And we track performance of every one of our coaching clients daily. And we look at that, every week, every month, we're tracking the results of that spend. So I can unequivocally say that Facebook ads do work, because across a very large data set of brands, we are deploying this channel at scale and measuring it every single day very accurately, and people are scaling and profiting from Facebook ads. So to those that say Facebook ads just don't work, I guess I would ask them what data set they're looking at, and maybe invite them to look at my data set to say, this is the data that I'm seeing, and maybe that would change their opinion of it, or give them the courage to try it again if it didn't work in the past.
I think you've just nailed it there. It's the courage to try again.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, that's a big message for our audience. Anyone who's feeling some pain here and experiencing that uncertainty or vulnerability, sometimes in business, we've just got to bat up again. And, you've just quoted some phenomenal stats there in terms of, the percentage of the Facebook ad spend that your agency is involved in. And as you mentioned, the beauty of that is you are seeing the data, the real, in time, live data on a daily basis. And you're able to utilize that in a powerful way for your clients to get, a sound result. So it's just a great point, because I'm just hearing it time and time again. And I know that Facebook ads work because we've got some amazing clients that, it wouldn't be in existence if it wasn't for Facebook advertising. Their business just wouldn't be where it is now. But I agree. It's that fear. And it's really having the confidence to try again. And I think, again, that's why your program's so important, because it's empowering. It's empowering to be able to know how it works, and know exactly what kind of advertising you should be doing and where to spend your money. Jay, can I just ask what's working? So I saw, for example, on your Insta that you were talking about the first order discount, for example, when it comes to Facebook advertising. I love that you share the variety. There's not just one method, there's not one quick fix and magically, making you millions. There's a lot of diversity, a lot of different things you can do. You talk about video advertising, you talk about, Facebook versus TikTok, and, perhaps, you could be putting your money into both. The reality is, but Facebook is more of the driver. But yeah, what are some of maybe the key things that you've seen recently kind of taking off in terms of advertising types or creative?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so one of the things that we do is all of this data that comes across our desk, we're aggregating it. So, for those that have tried ads in the past, there's a lot of different ways you can run ads. And what we're doing is we're deploying principles of how to run an ad account. And we're measuring that and taking feedback and changing the structure and the principles real time every week. So what we get is every month we do a thing called a swipe file. So that's when we look at a lot of different variables of ads. So headlines, images, the style of the creative. And we are kind of creating these reports on, hey, like across this amount of spend, this is the cream of the crop. So you can go and take that and implement it into your ad account. And it's almost like cheating, right? You've basically got the cheat code of these ads are working really well right now. And usually they translate. So thinking back to the last swipe file that I did, there's definitely a theme of UGC TikTok style creative that's working. So there's also, we've had some sub themes of things like founder-led creative. So we're just finding that when the founder is participating in that UGC style or user-generated content style, TikTok or Reels, that they're kind of getting better performance as well. So from a creative perspective, I think if you haven't yet gotten on board the vertical short form video format, you're probably going to have to do it at some point, right? So that's probably the biggest trend we've seen emerge in the last year to 18 months is just the amount of content that is going to that style. And it's just a gigantic trend. Have you seen that too?
That's a nice little tap on the shoulder for me. It's like the founder videos and the short. I know. I've been watching what you've been doing on your Insta. I'm like, I used to do that years ago. I created an online course and did 50 video tutorials. I kind of had video fatigue at the time. And I think I'm even in that phase of, all right, Elizabeth, you got to bat up again and get your face back out there on video. But yeah, it's really powerful stuff. But I love that you said you've got that swipe file. It's like the black book of what's working. And then you've mentioned, the user generated content and you're on top of, what's trending essentially. And as you said, that most times can be transferable to the clients that you're working with in some way, shape or form. So yeah, absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Jay, I want to talk to you about the rule of 7. We actually asked our community to contribute to some of the questions that I'm asking you today, because we wanted to kind of cover some of their pain points. So this is one actually from Lisa, who has a children's wear brand, and she had asked about the rule of 7. So this is the idea that a potential customer needs to have multiple, touch points with a brand before making a purchase. So it's called the rule of 7 in marketing, as you know. In today's digital age, are there any variables that we need to be aware of? Is that still relevant now?
Yeah, I think it's getting closer to 16 from one report I read, but yeah, it's I think it's definitely relevant. I think it's really product dependent as well. Like, I think you could have one touch point of Dad Cooler and spend $20. One of my other brands that I founded was Yabby Taps, and the average order value there is $800, $900. So I don't think you're dropping $900 on taps without seeing samples and thinking about it for a while. So maybe the touch points there are far more. It's a 6-week to 8-week conversion cycle. So it's definitely brand and product dependent. But as a rule, yeah, I absolutely do think that you need multiple touch points. The way that we structure our ad accounts have a process. Like, we mostly work with aspirational design-led brands, right? We're not working with Wish or Amazon, sort of like just mass products or homogenous products. Mostly in the community, it's mostly founders with a design-led product. So, we try and structure our remarketing or our mid-funnel in a way where they get multiple touch points, and each of the touch points is not just slamming product down their throat, but it's, a curated piece of content that explains a USP, or it's actually like not just remarketing. It's kind of a good mix of different content that they can see. Because if you're just showing the same thing, like, here's my product over and over and over, if they didn't buy from it in the first 4 impressions, they're probably not going to buy from it after 7. So, but if you explain, hey, you can use our, you can use our product in this way or that way, or use it in this way, or, we've got baby girls kid clothing and baby boys kid clothing, and this is our new collection, and this is our winter range, and maybe something will latch on and stick. So yeah, I definitely think that you need to be structuring your marketing and your funnels in a way that have multiple touch points. And probably more so as your average order value increases.
Yeah. So not to scare everyone now that you've mentioned 16, but but I agree. It's product specific or product category specific. It could be price point, as you said. If it's a higher price point, there may need to be more time, nurturing that person before that they, whether it is, as you said, a sample in tapware or whatever it is for them to gain that trust to go to the next level. But I think what you mentioned in terms of that diversity of marketing, making sure that it's not one-dimensional either, that it's interesting, you're offering up things that are new and exciting in terms of the creative or the ad to keep that, potential customer engaged. So let's just say it was 16 touch points, right? Do you have a point of view on, could you do that through Facebook alone if you had enough variety of content? Or are you better having, you've got Facebook, you've got TikTok, you've got Pinterest, you're doing your influencer marketing, obviously you've got email marketing, all of the things. Is it one or both?
I think it's a stage of business thing. If you're still trying to scale, if you try and do a lot of channels, you will be paralyzed with the lack of understanding of which channel contributed to your growth, because all of these channels will attribute all of your sales. So if you added up the attribution from TikTok, Pinterest, Facebook, they'll be like 3 times your actual sales, because everyone's claiming everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you're under 100 grand a month in revenue, I think you should try one and try and scale with one, because then you have one big lever that you're pulling on, and you can see the impact in your business without even needing to open the ad account tracking. You can just see, I spent money here and my sales went up, and it's really clear cause and effect. So I do think that using Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram ads, you can achieve a really robust funnel. Obviously, you can supplement that with organic social and email marketing, and they can add to the touch points. But absolutely, you can build a complete all-in-one funnel with Meta ads. Like Dad Cooler, I think we did $480,000 last August in a single month selling stubby holders just with Facebook ads. I didn't post once on Instagram. I literally didn't have time, so I just ran ads, if that makes sense. So you can scale tremendously with Facebook ads. December 2017, we sold $1 million in a single month. It was 1.1 million, but 1 million ex GST of that book in a single month just with Facebook ads. And I think people think that they're tapping out a channel at 10,000 or 20,000 a month in terms of revenue. Yeah. And the reality is that you can probably achieve your wildest dreams just with one channel if you do it right, and you get that cause and effect and the confidence to do more of it, and you get one thing really dialed in. So yeah, I don't really recommend trying to go wide too soon. There's a certain point, definitely, but I think from a paid perspective, you really want to be able to create that cause and effect with the activity and the impact in the business.
I'm pretty sure our listeners' ears would have pricked up just then. You know, you can do more by doing less. Essentially, what you've just articulated, that one channel can be as powerful as the stats that you've just, shared with us. But we often see, brands are trying to do all the things, and even, the smaller brands are trying to do all the things, and they're not doing anything to its full potential. It's just impossible, if you're a solo business owner or a small team, to be doing all the things. And again, if you don't have deep pockets, you don't have a big budget, your money's only going to get you so far. So I love what you just shared with us then, Jay. That is very, very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, do less, but do it better. That's the motto.
Yeah. Do less, do it better, guys. You heard it here first. Jay, if I was to ask you, if you were to really curate it down to 3 action steps that, brands could take to immediately help to scale their e-commerce business. You've just shared one. That's maybe you might just say, I'll just do Facebook ads. That's it. But what would those 3 action steps be that they could implement from today?
I think the number one thing, even before you do Facebook ads, is you need to have a scoreboard. You need to understand if you're winning every day. And if you can answer the question, did the activity that I undertook yesterday or that I'm doing, is it impacting my business positively or negatively? And if you can answer that question every day, success will be inevitable, because you'll just constantly move slowly towards the actions that are improving your business. So the number one thing you could do is get clear on how much profit you're making in your business every day. Not how much revenue, not how many orders, how much profit. So, that's essentially what the clarity sheet is. It's, you could definitely figure it out yourself, but tracking your profit every day, if you implemented that daily discipline, would lead to success, even if you had to trial and error your way through the next steps, if that makes sense. So I think that would definitely be my number one action, is track profit daily. My second action would be choose one marketing channel until you're at $1 million per annum turnover. So it doesn't matter which one, to be honest, but if you're tracking your profit daily and you're doing one marketing activity and scaling into one marketing activity, you'll be able to see the impact of the profit of that activity every day, and you'll know if it's working or not. And what that will do is that will give you confidence to do more of that activity, and it will stop the doubt. It will stop the second guessing. You will clearly see cause and effect. So I actually think they're probably the only 2. I don't know if you need 3, but I think that's the 2 things that I would do, is get really clear daily profit, choose a channel, and get really good at it, and see if it impacts your profit.
Love it. I'm all about profit. So yeah, could not agree more. High-fiving you on that one, the tracking your daily profit. With the one marketing channel, I think it gets a little bit tricky. Do you feel, because what I feel sometimes brands will give up too soon. So if someone's really laser focused on that one marketing channel and it's not working, it's not firing, what do they do next? If they've got to stick to that channel, what do they do next? It's not working.
Yeah, I think the first thing is you need to really understand what working is. And I think the definition that people have of what is working can sometimes be really flawed. So I think people can do Facebook ads and they can say, I didn't get a 10x ROAS, or I didn't get a 6x ROAS. When I made 480 grand with this, my ad account said I had a 1 ROAS, right? So the tracking is so bad, it didn't feed in shipping revenue, and it was missing about 40% of the orders in Facebook. The tracking was so bad that if I was looking at the ad account, no sane human being would have spent the amount that I spent on ads. But what I was doing was I was tracking the profit daily, And I knew all I was doing was Facebook. So I didn't even need to look at the attribution. So I think the first thing is when people think it's not working, often they've heard that they should be getting a 4 ROAS or a 6 ROAS. And maybe they should, but if you're making money from that channel and your profit is increasing, that should be the North Star. So I think like the first thing is, how are you defining whether it's working or not? Because my definition is you make more profit. And if your definition is an arbitrary ROAS number that doesn't mean anything and isn't tracked correctly, like that could be where you're coming unstuck.
Yeah.
So if that's, say you're tracking it okay, then the thing is you need to commit to one. So if you're convinced that one isn't working for you, then move on to the next logical channel. So if Meta ads, Facebook and Instagram ads didn't work, perhaps you try Google ads. If that didn't work, perhaps you try influencer marketing, but go all in on one, right? Because if you're doing 2, you might get a little bit of success, but you won't know which channel it came from, and you won't have that confidence to scale it, and you'll stay stuck.
There's our third thing. Define what you mean by it's not working.
I like that. Yeah, let's chalk that one up as number 3.
Yeah, we'll definitely chalk that up as number 3. Jay, I would love to get your take on wholesale. So I think I heard you, I can't remember where I heard you say it, but just about wholesale. And again, you're in the business of e-commerce, right? And generally, I'm not sure about the wholesale side of things, but you're driving with, direct to consumer.
Yeah.
I think I've heard you say that you believe that brands should be, procuring a certain amount of revenue through their direct to consumer channel before even considering going down the wholesale path. Can you maybe share a little bit more or elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I think it's really important how you do wholesale, because so maybe we just start with why I often see people do wholesale. People don't have the confidence that they can go and get customers themselves. So another way of kind of abdicating responsibility of that is to just go and sell your products at a 50% discount to someone else who has the customers, right? That's essentially what wholesale is. So if you can get unlimited customers yourself, you probably would never need wholesale, and you're probably in a better situation because you own the customer, and perhaps you can even make better margin on it. So that being said, one of the killers of e-commerce businesses is high fixed costs. So if you can start to spread your fixed cost base over other channels like wholesale, I think that's really good. But I think it's the way that you do wholesale is important. What you don't want to do is you don't want to create a competitor for your product online. So if you can wholesale to bricks and mortar, or you can wholesale where the agreement is that they won't sell online, I think it's all upside, right? Because it's a completely different customer. The challenges I see people face is when they wholesale to Surf Stitch or the Iconic, and they weren't planning on doing it after payday sale in a week, but the Iconic is 30% off their products. So they're going to either have a really slow sales period, or they're forced to discount as well. And you basically create a competitor which dilutes your ability to actually acquire customers online yourself, because you can end up spending money on ads, and then it drives people to your wholesaler who's already got a 50% wholesale discount, and you're basically double paying for acquisition. So I think that's the scenario you really want to avoid, and that can cripple your ability to scale your own direct to consumer channel. But when wholesale is done right, through bricks and mortar, in a non-competing way to your online, I think it can be amazing. It can be amazing at finding new customers, at amortizing your fixed costs over a different channel, and making more money, right? So I think it matters how you do wholesale as well.
Interesting point. I love how you kind of shared that. Don't create a competitor for yourself, essentially. All channels have got to work in synergy. I guess some of the benefits of wholesale that we see is very much around that brand recognition. So growing that brand recognition in particular in the early days. But I think, really important points that you just shared. Can I just ask around, the e-commerce equation with, you've mentioned that at wholesale, it's 50% off. So for our listeners, the general, rule of thumb, if you're selling to a retailer, is that they will want a 50% margin, right? Sometimes more, sometimes 55, sometimes 60, if you're selling to the big boys. So with customer acquisition, Jay, is there a comparison, a generalized comparison that you can make to the cost of a customer through e-commerce? So is it like, 30% compared to 50% at wholesale that you're kind of giving away? Is there, anything around that you could share, or is it very I'm assuming, it's specific to a brand and a category, but.
Yeah, it is specific, but we obviously we track marketing efficiency ratio, MER, across everyone. So it really depends on the other metrics as well. So if you've got obviously it depends, but our benchmark range, most people in the group are spending 20 to 40% on marketing, right? Or cost of acquisition. So the bigger you get, usually the less you have to pay. So some of the biggest brands in the group are like high teens or even low teens in terms of their acquisition costs. And it depends on so much, but generally 20 to 40% would be the range of what we would, you'd be kind of spending on marketing cost.
Yeah, great. I think a great kind of, scale to be aware of. For those who, again, are going to go and do their own kind of cost analysis around, the e-commerce equation at the end of the day.
100%.
Jay, we're going to switch channels. I just wanted to ask you about AI. Again, this was a question from one of our community members.
Awesome.
Is there anything that you can share with us around AI when it comes to, kind of the changing landscape in e-commerce and digital marketing that, brands and businesses need to be on top of like yesterday?
Yeah, so obviously this is super topical and it's an emerging field and one that I'm watching really closely. I think the first thought on AI is that you're probably already using AI. The biggest advertising platforms, Google and Meta, have recently both released pretty big changes to their campaign types. So Google's launched PMax, Performance Max, and Facebook has launched Advantage Plus Shopping. And both of these tools have taken away a lot of the targeting settings that you pre-select. And they're basically using machine learning and their AI and intent-based algorithms to start to deliver ads differently. So probably the biggest change that I've seen is the Advantage Plus shopping campaigns in Meta. They are performing materially better than the traditional campaigns. And it's the biggest update since the iOS changes, where they're starting to move from, you select an interest and they'll show you ads to people that are interested in that. And they're moving more towards this machine learning or intent-based algorithm where it's making assumptions on people's behavior based on AI and machine learning and those sorts of tools, and delivering your ads to people not based on what they've historically shown as being interested in, but real time their activity or their predicted activity. And the performance from that has been kind of wild. August last year, it was pretty hard with ads. After iOS, people were still making it work, but now we're seeing just a massive resurgence in performance from those tools that are being deployed through platform. Yeah. So that's the first trend that I'm seeing, is just the amount of money that's going to these new features within some of these big advertising platforms. The thing that I'm really thinking about with AI is data sets, right? Like these algorithms and these neural nets are basically going to be as smart as the data set that you provide them. So the thing that excites me is the amount of data that we have access to as a community with regard to ads and variants of ads and ways that we're structuring accounts. So I'm quite excited about the thought of, we're almost doing AI a little bit in the group as well. We're synthesizing large amounts of data, and we're, basically predicting what will work for brands based on big data sets, which is not too dissimilar to AI. We're just doing it in like a less intelligent way, like manually, if that makes sense, as a team. But yeah, I think there's some of the big trends in how I'm thinking about AI right now. I've got premium ChatGPT subscription, and I've got it bookmarked. I use ChatGPT daily, which is just fun to learn prompts and see how we can deploy it. And there's a lot of chat in our community about different prompts and how people are using it, which is fun to watch develop as well.
Yeah, it's scary. I've been on the old ChatGPT too, and my mind's been blown. I'm just like, wow. But I'm just kind of immersing myself in this space, and of course getting questions every day from clients. But it's interesting, the questions I'm getting. It's like, some people even that are working in the industry, they're like, oh my gosh, is AI going to take over my job? Like, and it is real. Like, the rate of knots that AI is growing, there's probably not going to be one area of our lives that, we're not going to be utilizing it in one way, shape or form. And as you mentioned, probably already are and we're maybe not even aware of it. But I think it's an
100%.
important point that you've brought up, being in a community like yours, we need to be aware of these things, and it's where do you get access to the right information that you can then implement and integrate into your business to ensure that, you are there, you're on the front line with everyone else and you're not being left behind.
Yeah, 100%.
So now, Jay, this next question I ask to all of my guests. I'm sure that you've got a lot to juggle on a daily basis. You've got multiple businesses, you've got this amazing community, you're teaching, you're mentoring, you're consulting. So from your own perspective as a business owner, Jay, what kind of practices or support systems do you have in place that help you with mindset and well-being and allow you to operate optimally with all the things you do?
Yeah, good question. It's definitely something I'm getting better at. I wouldn't say that I am a finished product with regard to that at all. But if I was to think back 10 years ago when I started and to now, I think there's definitely been some improvements, although it's still a work in progress. I think there's a huge amount of, I think the first thing is just a physical well-being. So I have a PT 6 days a week. Right now, I have a nutritionist that calls me at 7:30 every night, and we talk about what I ate, and they keep me accountable, which is very good because I have a sweet tooth. So from a physical perspective, I think just an awareness of what you're eating and moving every day is massively important. I'm definitely more focused on work-life balance than I have been in the past. So I try and take every 8th week off and have a cool down week just to kind of go away, spend time with the family and recharge. And I actually find that I end up moving faster by having every 8th week off than I do just grinding it out for the whole year. So I think that's massively important, is just having those clear blocks in my calendar where I know I'm going to have a full reset. I'm going to have, I usually try and get out of my environment, switch my phone off and spend a lot of time in nature, surfing or hanging out with the family and those sorts of things. So I actually just got back from Byron Bay last week. I spent a week up there. So yeah, they're the main things that I've implemented. It's just like a real discipline around, physical health, structured breaks, and kind of work-life balance, just trying to switch off every 8th week and not work the hours I used to in my 20s, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does make sense. Not jealous about Byron at all over here. Out of all of the guests I've ever had on this podcast, I don't think anyone's ever said that their nutritionist calls them every night to ask them what they've I need their number. I need to start working with your nutritionist. So can you just message me their number after this?
Yeah, I don't know if that says good things about me or bad things about me.
That's amazing. That's a commitment. Obviously, physical exercise, out in nature, obviously time with family, all of those amazing things. Often, we'll have guests talk about meditation and yoga and, all of these amazing things. But I absolutely love that accountability. That's what I need in my life, because I have all these, I haven't got it right either. Don't worry, it's still a journey. But I have all of these, great aspirations, but I need that accountability buddy. So yeah, if my nutritionist was ringing me every night, I tell you, I'd be pulling my head in with the snacks. That's for sure.
It does make you think twice. But I'm just a huge believer in the theory of constraints. So, if you have physical goals and you have a constant problem that's coming up, which is nutrition, if you actually think about what could you do? And if you think, there's a lot you could do. You could have someone call you every day and be accountable if you wanted to. So there's a lot of options available to you. You could have a PT waiting there, and you have to show up. You can't. Yeah. It's in the diary. You have to do it. So it's just in business, in life, I really like the theory of constraints. Just thinking, what is holding me back, and how do I just ruthlessly go after that constraint and try and remove it, whatever it takes. So I think that's a good example of that. Maybe a little bit extreme, to be honest, but I don't know if I'll keep it forever.
I love extreme. I love it. And I also love that you said you've got a cool down week, having that every 8th week off. I don't think I've ever had that response either. That's a great practice to have. So whether it's 8 weeks, for our listeners that is realistic, or 12 weeks, or just even having that cool down week to look forward to, I think is pretty powerful, so that we can fill up our own cups to, keep going and build that resilience as well, and do all the things we need to.
Even a long weekend, just getting out of your environment, taking a little break, it's in the diary, it's coming up, and I think it's really beneficial. Yeah. I also think it just creates these blocks, and it's almost like you have 6 New Year's Eves. So you come back after one of those breaks, and you've written down your plan for the next block, and you've got a new amount of energy, and the motivation you have after New Year's Eve, and you're just ready to rip into the year. It's like every 9th week, that's how I feel. And the team tell me, oh my God, he's come back. He's going to have all these ideas, and, you know, they're prepared for it. But I think it's almost like you get 6 of those New Year's Eve blocks every year, and it creates a different momentum. And I really like it. Like, I actually do think, even though you lose an 1/8 of your year, from a productivity perspective, I think the other 7/8 are far more productive, and it feels better as well.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. We've all got to draw our inspiration from somewhere. So I love the New Year's Eve kind of analogy, but I used to get that from my travel. So I used to travel a lot, you know, when I had my own wholesale business and I was a retail buyer and doing all of the things. I used to come back from those trips so inspired, and my team would be like, oh no, here she is again. I'm going to come and download all these amazing ideas. We're going to do this and this. But I think we all need those moments in time to really immerse ourselves and with the inspiration and creativity, whatever it is that kind of, you know, that we enjoy to do. But yeah, absolutely love that. I'm definitely going to take that tip, Jay, and start to practice it myself.
Love that.
Now, Jay, you've been so generous with, you know, again, your time and your knowledge today, but I'm going to ask you one last question to leave our listeners with. And then I just want you to share how they can get involved in the e-commerce equation. But are there any other keys to success that you can share just to end on in regards to, you know, your e-commerce growth predictions for 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, I think we've touched on a lot of those keys. You know, I think really, if you can get clarity into what's happening in your business from a profitability and the constraints in that business, and you can have confidence to execute on those and repeat that process, I think that's the real key, you know, and you'll find the way success will be inevitable if you get that clarity and you confidently work through the constraints of your business. And I think that's really one of my core beliefs. Specifically with 2023, I think that Facebook ads really have come back a lot since Advantage Plus shopping, and they seem to be working really well. So I think that brands that embody that move toward this new style of creative that's also working will have good success if they have a good product. So I think that, you know, just to add a little bit more color to the things I've already spoken about, they'd probably be my biggest predictors. Is, you know, people are going to make a lot of money this year with Facebook ads again, and the content style will continually shift towards this short form vertical video. I think we're going to see some great success stories this year.
Who doesn't want to make a lot of money? Thank you, Jay. Now, Jay, how do our listeners get in touch and inquire about your powerful programs and the coaching that you offer?
Yeah, so probably Instagram is where I publish most of my content and spend the most time. So you're welcome to follow me on Instagram. It's Jay Wright Official. And if you want to learn more about the e-commerce equation, it's ecommerceequation.com.au.
And coming away from the e-commerce equation, what can our listeners expect if they jump into your program?
We help founders get the clarity and the confidence that they need to scale. Every 60 days, a member hits $1 million per month, and they will get a really clear roadmap on how to operate their business for clarity and maximum profitability and efficiency. And they'll get an understanding of how to predictably, profitably, and scalably attract customers. And they'll get a toolkit of ways to convert people to get more efficient and get the most out of the traffic that they are driving. So we cover attract, convert, and operate. And yeah, we're basically, you know, no matter where you are, if you've already got product to market fit and you've got some runs on the board, in 12 or 24 or 36 months, I don't think there's anyone that couldn't really get to $1 million per month if they follow that formula and they stick with it and they work through the constraints over time. So that's kind of our core goal, is to create 8-figure Australian e-commerce brands.
Where do I sign? Absolutely love it, Jay. Thank you so much. Of course, what you and your team are doing is absolutely outstanding. We'll continue to stalk you. We're here to support, and no doubt our listeners are going to get so much gold out of this conversation today. But yeah, well done. Can't wait to see what you do next. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Super grateful to be here and to chat, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Jay.
Cheers.